Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, well, we're going to talk about a couple things. One is something called Operation Gladio. The other is we're going to talk about the CIA. We're going to talk about hidden caches. And we're going to talk about building a network. And we're going to just kind of build on all of it. So let's first get started. We're going to talk about Operation Gladio. Now, Operation Gladio was at the end of World War II. We decided to set up a network. And, you know, it can be debated. Maybe the Catholic Church decided to do this. Maybe the U.S. government. It's a big gray area. It was NATO. But basically, we decided to set up a system where if Russia or really anybody else ever invaded Europe, we would have a way to kind of retaliate and an infrastructure already put in place. And we'd be a little bit prepared. And I think that's something as a prepper that could really be useful. You know, understanding some concepts, how it's done, what other people have done is definitely how we learned, you know, with a lot of things. And, you know, see what kind of tricks the government had in order to be prepared for an invasion or a takeover. And I guess, you know, from a prepper point, I kind of wonder, you know, I feel like martial law and the government kind of occupying your area might be similar to a takeover. So I wanted to kind of dig deep. Kevin, I know it's a big mess, but tell me about Operation Gladio.
All right. Well, Operation Gladio is the code name for clandestine stay-behind networks of armed resistance that were originated by the Western Union, NATO, and the CIA. Now, almost every country in Europe that wasn't communist had its own setup. Operation Gladio technically is the name of the Italian version of this. Okay. And that was the first one that was kind of discovered. See, what happened was they set up these caches of high-grade military equipment and weapons. Automatic weapons, hand grenades, C4, you know, rockets, all sorts of stuff. And they were setting up these caches all over Italy. And they had certain people involved with each one. What it was designed to do was be basically like the resistance fighters in France during World War II, but for each country and set up to be well armed. And it was basically small terrorist organizations, basically, you know, based on attacking military targets. And things just got a little out of hand when you have like secret networks of anti-communists with large amounts of weapons. Things get a little bit weird. So in Italy, the 1960s and early 70s, they call it the years of lead. And basically what it was just people blowing each other up, you know, nonstop. People were getting murdered. There was mafia. There's every type of organization you could think of was going hard to try and be in charge of Italy.
Right.
and some of those groups were very much socialist, and they started getting blown up all the time. And it seemed a little bit weird because it wasn't just socialist groups that were getting blown up and assassinated, but it was also police officers that were investigating. So right, so somebody called the police in Italy in the 1970s and said that they saw a dead body in a car, and it was parked at such and such a location. So the police went over there to go check it out. And when they got to the car blew up and killed all the cops. So they started doing some investigation of that, and it turns out the car blew up not from dynamite or anything, but from C4, like military grade C4. You know, something that's not something you see with everyday terrorists. And they started investigating, and it got, weirder and weirder and more complicated. Until finally they kind of figured out what was going on. And they said that the CIA had set up these caches, but the truth is there are a lot of people involved in it, and a lot of different countries involved in it. So
well, that's the thing. I was reading the Italian Mob. I was reading Opus Dei. I was, the Vatican. And all these people were kind of trusted with this, and
right.
It just is a big, huge, deep dive cover up. But as much as it's crazy, it's, they were desperate to come up with a solution, and everybody wanted in on it. But I feel like there were hands. I don't know. I feel like the Vatican always has their hands in shit. And honestly, Opus Dei is
especially
always kind of, been pulling strings on stuff like this. And I feel like they pushed for it. And then, we go along, everybody goes along. I mean, it was NATO. This is definitely not something to just blame the US. This is
right.
All of NATO. I mean, everybody was kind of in on this. If anything, I mean, again, it is so hard to sort out the origins. I feel like I would kind of want to blame the Vatican. It's a big mess. Well,
yeah. Now in let's see, there's the Six Powers Lines Committee that was involved with this, which I've never heard of. Also in Austria, it was the Austrian Association of Hiking Sports and Society that was running this. Doesn't sound like a nefarious organization, but they convicted two guys, Hugo Rosner and Theodor Sokek. They were convicted in Austria for setting up this network, but then mysteriously, for no reason, they were just pardoned and let go. So it's like there's a lot of high-level people involved in this, and nothing really came about it. In Denmark, it was called Absalon. France, it was called Plan Blue. That set up in Germany, but they ended up having to dissolve that early because all the people in charge of it were like hardcore Nazis, not like part of the Nazi party when it was going on, but like serious hardcore neo-Nazi, fascists. Greece was called those Nazis. Yeah, in Greece it was called the LOK, the mountain. It was drawn from the mountain raiding special companies, and it was going on in the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, Turkey, Austria, and in Belgium. Now, Belgium was a weird one because there was a group of serial killers, is what they called them, but they were serially killing communists in Belgium. They were called the Brandtbark Killers.
Sure,
and there were three of them. They never found out who they were, but there was the Giant, which was a tall guy that seemed to be in charge of it. There's a guy codenamed the Killer, who was the shooter. He's the one actually doing the trigger pulling. And then there was the Old Man, who was apparently he was younger than I am, but he was old for that. I guess old is different, has different connotation. When you're in the terrorist game. But he was basically the getaway driver. And there's all sorts of they never really did discover who these guys were, but there are all these sorts of weird underground terrorist networks that were set up based on these weapons caches. And what happens is when the only tool you have is a hammer, then everything's a nail. If you set up these networks to overthrow the communists when they invade, and then they never invade, what are you going to do with all that stuff? You still got to kill commies, right? I mean, I'm not completely opposed to the whole idea of this thing. And I think, honestly, when it comes down to it, it's one of those being prepared for any sort of outcome. You have to have an idea and a plan for it. And this was one of those plans that never really was needed. And so then was, got a little bit out of hand with, when you give young, crazy people large amounts of heavy weaponry, and then don't give them anything to use it on, they're going to find something to use it for.
Right. Now that sounds about right.
Now, if you guys wanted to get into this Operation Gladio, you could read up on this for months and months and never get to the end of it. There's so much weird, clandestine stuff going on with this between 1947 and 1962. It's a little bit wild.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know. Everybody I read is like, yeah, I've been studying for years and I have no information on it. I don't know. Yeah. I did get Gladio in Italy. They actually had 622 operatives and 139 caches, but that's just Italy. That's, Gladio. That's not this whole network. They were saying actually that, in Germany, they actually recruited from the Hitler Youth. Mm-hmm. And that's why you had such hardcore, indoctrinated kind of people. Because, when you have a Boy Scout club, learning about, gassing people, then, you're bound to get some crazies in there. Because, if you got the gas of merit badge, there's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a little bit of an issue. But Germany, that was one of the countries where it was first dissolved because the CIA was running that one and almost entirely.
Okay.
And everybody they had employed was serious Nazis, and they were scared it was going to get found out that the CIA was supporting Nazis killing communists.
Yeah, they tend to frown on that.
Yeah, they didn't want to get busted with that one, so they kind of wrapped that one up pretty early.
Now, let's kind of shift gears and talk about, I don't know, how this might apply to us, to preppers. So a lot of this was set up as a way to gather intelligence, conduct espionage, sabotage. They were trained in guerrilla warfare. I mean, it was basically meant to be a force multiplier. You make the individuals so much more. And I just think, in a way, having hidden caches, I mean, and that's a way of a form of prepping, developing a network of people that you trust, people that are, I don't know, I want to say on your side, but it's just people who have American values, maybe. I mean, I don't know. People who want to preserve your way of life. How about that? We'll call it that. People who, have a common interest. Well, I'm trying to find a way to not be completely crazy, and it's not easy. It's a delicate dance right here. Because I'm not saying that our goal is to, be anti-government or be anti-establishment. There's a lot of good things that can come from government and whatever. I I feel like there's a lot of people that want to put their thumb on you. Let's say people who are anti-communist. Let's go with that. Anti-authoritarian dictatorship. Because I think we can all agree that that's not a crazy place to be, But, who knows? Maybe we can't. I don't know. But more and more, as a society, we seem to accept that, it feels like we're going back into a class system,
Right.
kind of feudal warfare, kind of where, we have serfs and we have royalty. And if you're part of the government or Hollywood or some kind of elite class of snobbery, you're in one level and everybody else is a dumb, ignorant racist and that kind of thing. And I feel like, I don't know, I just have Kevin cringing as I'm staring at him here. And I feel like I'm just digging deeper and deeper. And he's like, maybe if I just stay quiet, he'll just keep digging until it's the awesomest
Listen,
show ever.
I'm not objecting to anything you're saying. I fully support killing communists.
All right. Well, as long as we can get behind that. Of course, isn't this the road that started all this stuff with Gladio, right? That's how it went down such a bad road. All of a sudden people are getting the police to come out to nonsense and whatever. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about when they're putting people involuntarily in FEMA camps and and they're rounding up people and putting the thumb down on everybody. Having a way out of it is something that wouldn't be wrong to plan for. That's the answer. But so what type of things were in these caches? You said hand grenades and C4 and things, but even simple things when governments crack down can be useful. There's a lot of things. Stuff. Go ahead.
A lot of the stuff was actually communications equipment. A lot of this stuff was based on setting up an organization after things went wrong. Having a basic setup, where people could communicate, with one another. But also each one of these individual stay behind networks was designed to recruit more people when it was needed. It was designed to to build multiple independent cells of armed resistance fighters. And I think that's what's so interesting about it, is that a lot of these were set up, especially in the Netherlands, Norway. A lot of these were set up basically to facilitate communication with a deposed government. If there's a Soviet invasion, the government could leave, but still have communication with the citizens in the country. And I think that was really interesting. A lot of this stuff was based on communications and organizing things ahead of time so that things could be organized, in the moment after things had gone haywire. Right.
No, I think that's a great place to start. It's being able to know who to trust, to know who to reach out to, having the tools. I mean, you got to remember, when governments have cracked down in the past, they outlawed ridiculous things, like martial arts training. They, all this stuff becomes, knowledge is power. Having just information set aside, things that, how more and more as a society, you're like, oh, I shouldn't Google that. The government, Big Brother's watching. I don't know. I feel like since Biden and the rest of them have taken charge, I'm less afraid of it. I just feel like the government's so inept that they don't know what's going on. But, maybe I'm crazy. Who knows?
I kind of like my government that way, honestly.
Yeah, you're just kind of like, I don't know if they can pull that off. But, it's always funny how both parties are down for the Patriot Act, whenever they're in power. When they're not in power,
Mm-hmm.
the Patriot Act is a big government overreach, according to both parties. Right. But when they are in power, it's like, no, it's a good thing. I think I'm down. But they have a tight, noose around the population's neck, and it just gets tighter and tighter as you get closer and closer to, an authoritarian dictatorship. And I'm just saying, we really do seem to be setting up a class system. All our politics is about dividing people and separating everybody and turning people against each other. And you have different values, based on different value to society based on who you are and what you believe and who you align with, instead of what you actually produce or how smart you are, or the things that we used to consider values are not, value to society, and, being a good, creative person who can think outside the box is more negative in a controlling government than the other. So just having a plan to ensure that we don't become slaves. I mean, that's the thing, people used to talk after World War II of never again, and the idea is, hey, pay attention, realize what the government has done to people in the past, not our government, what governments have done, and just understand human nature and, the kind of control that they look to, put on. Looking into the past and seeing what governments have done kind of gives you an idea of what tools might be useful and what you might be, looking for, a solution to ensure that it doesn't happen. Trying to point out the past has been, I think, the libertarian approach of, hey, communism is bad because look at what keeps happening. But the more our schools and education system keep changing history, you would think history can't change, but it turns out you can frame it any way you want. And the more this happens, the more you realize that we're kind of losing control. We're losing a grip on society, and we're just going to a place that I feel like it's a same familiar path that we've been down before as a society. And I think that taking steps to protect the people you care about now by building some kind of infrastructure would not necessarily be wrong. And I'm not saying we need to store things that are illegal or anything bad like that. I'm suggesting that things that are legal right now, when governments change their mind, may become illegal in the future. Yeah. And I just know we've gone down dangerous roads before.
Yeah, well, I feel like a lot of people, don't trust the government, and that's well and good. I'm not one of those people. I do trust the government, but I don't trust the government I'm going to have next year. You know what I mean? I don't know that nothing is gonna get, go crazy. And I don't trust the government to tell me the truth about everything, but I trust the government generally has my best interest in mind right now. But that doesn't mean that, next year it's not going to be some other completely different situation. Things change in the United States, day to day, especially with what you find out the CIA and the FBI and all these groups, the NSA, they're always pulling some bullshit. Everyone talks shit about Snowden, but the truth is nobody would know what the fuck was going on, and they'd still be doing that exact same shit if he didn't talk out about it. Now, they are still doing that same shit, but now we know they're doing it. It used to be like when you say, oh, they're spying on everybody, people be like, oh, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. Well, they were spying on everybody, and they still are. It's one of those things where where the government has enough money and has enough power that they can do shady bullshit, and when people are in that position, they do shady bullshit.
Exactly.
And it's best to be prepared for that sort of stuff. Now, I had a friend of mine who posted something on Facebook, basically apologizing for his daughter's actions and that he didn't raise her that way. And I didn't really know what he was talking about until I found a video, and it was this girl down in New York City. Was from my area. She went down to New York City during the Black Lives Matter, Black Lives protests, and she threw a Molotov cocktail at a van full of police officers. Now, the problem is, there's two problems here. One, throwing Molotov cocktails at police officers is not really cool. I'm not really down with that sort of shit.
No, but that's not acceptable behavior.
The main problem that I had with this, that he really should have been apologizing for, is this girl filled a beer bottle up with gasoline, and then stuck toilet paper in the top, lit it on fire, and threw it. And immediately the toilet paper went out, and a glass bottle full of gasoline just smashed against a police car. And the police car just pulled over and grabbed her and handcuffed her and threw her in the back. And now she's got 3 cases of attempted murder on her. Now,
hasn't seen that play out.
What you really should be apologizing is for not teaching your daughter how to make a Molotov cocktail that works.
Does she even listen to this podcast? What are you doing?
I know, seriously. Toilet paper? That's not going to work. You need a good cotton rag for that. And that was really something that I feel like that's what he should be apologizing for. I know my son could make a working Molotov cocktail. I don't have any question about that. I teach my children properly. So I'm just saying, when it comes to raising your kids, when it comes to preparing for the future, invest a little bit of time and energy in making sure you have access to materials you might not have access to in the future. And building some of these caches might be a good idea. That's all I'm saying.
That only sounds right.
Now, we have done an episode on building caches, how to build them, how to hide them, how to set them up.
What type of stuff should be in them.
Right. And I think that's important.
I don't know. I'm always speechless after Kevin's encouraging people to build Molotov cocktails there. I don't know.
I'm just saying you should know how. That's all. I'm not saying throw them at cops.
Finally, at least you're willing to put that disclaimer officially out there. Oh, it's a dangerous world we live in. That's all I could tell you. This is why I feel like we need to take a break from a new episode every week, every now and again. Because I'm like, let's just slow Kevin down. Let's I got some.
By the way, I should say this podcast is for entertainment use only.
Oh,
this is just entertainment. I'm not telling anybody to do anything.
Remember, we used to consult the lawyer and have the official disclaimer back in the day. We've gone past that. The lawyer's like, yeah, I can't even talk to you anymore.
I can't help you out anymore.
If I have knowledge of this, it's just going to end badly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, just, plan ahead is what we're saying. And yeah, it's weird. I mean, they're talking about, a lot of people were saying those are actually the origins of the CIA. I mean, they were created to prevent, outside things from happening. But more and more of this stuff gets closer to home. And it just is something to be aware of. And if you plan ahead and think about a future. But what I would say is remember where you may have these hidden caches. Letting them, disappear into the world when you have C4 and whatever in there. That's a thing that you might know.
Yeah, maybe keep a list. Yeah. Because a lot of these caches are still missing. The ones they found in Italy were not all of them. And some of them are just no idea where they're at. Someplace in Italy, somewhere.
That's it. So just something to be aware of. But with that,
keep track of your C4.
Keep track of your C4. But And that's what I got. So if you have thoughts, concerns, you want to tell Kevin that we actually got an email from a listener, and I was messaging back and forth with him, and he did say that he had some concerns of Kevin's take on the Black Panthers. And, I do. There's a lot of episodes that when we do it, I kind of cringe, and I'm like, yeah, whatever Kevin just said is definitely going to come back and haunt me later. And sure enough, there it is. But if you have concerns or questions or, just generally want to tell us how we're crazy, you can email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com. Or maybe you're just really enjoying this and you want to go ahead and support us on Patreon at patreon.com/preppingbadass. Maybe you want to show people that you're a don't give them a fucking inch crazy motherfucker and you want to wear the t-shirt and be proud. You could go over to preppingbadass.com and find the cool gear that's going to, set you apart in a crowd. Let people know that you're a crazy motherfucker. So with that, stay safe, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
The Survival and Basic Badass podcast is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.
Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.